I asked 3,000 people to rate every single mainline Pokemon game, and today I'll be going through the results. There are, by my count, 21 main series Pokemon games of rather variable quality. Scarlet and Violet were released full of bugs, while Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl disappointed with their lack of ambition. On the other hand, classics like Black and White impress with their involved storylines, while Emerald refines the core Pokemon experience to a T. So, which games came out on top? And which ones ranked right at the bottom of the list? Let's find out which Pokemon games are the most and least popular. Part 1. The Survey. So, before we go through the list, I want to talk a little about how I collected the data. First, I had to decide on which Pokemon games to include in the survey, which wasn't as simple as you might think. My first plan was to have people rank every single Pokemon game, the mainline entries, Pokemon Snap, Colosseum, Mystery Dungeon, and so on. But once I started actually putting together the list of games that would qualify, I realized it was just far too many. Plus, how do you compare something like Pokemon Cafe Mix to Red and Blue? So I decided to narrow things down to just the mainline games. But even then, it's a little complicated, thanks to Pokemon's third games. After Gold and Silver came Crystal. After Ruby and Sapphire came Emerald. You could argue these third games should be included alongside the original pair as one single entry. After all, Crystal is very similar to Gold and Silver. However, some third games are very different from their originals. Emerald, for instance, or Pokemon Yellow, if you even count that as a third game. And then we come to Black 2 and White 2, which are full-on sequels to Black and White, so they obviously shouldn't be lumped in with their originals. In the end, I decided to include every third game or set of sequels as its own entry on the list. In this way, I put together a final list of 21 entries, which I turned into a Google Forms survey. As usual, I also asked people to write up to 5 words about the various games on the list, so I'll be reading those responses out as we go to help explain why some games ranked where they did. And so, last week I put out the link to that survey, and in just a few days, 3,045 people participated in the survey. A huge thanks to everyone who took part. So, I took all of that data and used it to create a ranked list of every Pokemon game, from least to most popular. Now let's go through the list. Part 2. The ranking. The least popular mainline Pokemon games are Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. These recent remakes of a pair of Pokemon classics just didn't live up to expectations. Worst remake in the series, says one person. Buggy, messy, and boring remake, says another. Next, in 20th place, we have Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. Now, at this point, it's worth noting that it was my viewers who filled out this survey, and not the general public. Long-time Pokemon fans may not have enjoyed the vastly simplified mechanics found in the Let's Go games. But for beginners, it might be a different story. Pokemon for babies, wrote one person. Unique mechanics, good for beginners, said someone else. In 19th place is Pokemon Sword and Shield, a pair of games which were surrounded by controversy from the start. Complaints over the game's graphics, alongside the removal of the national dex, overshadowed the game's release for many people. One person wrote, "Awful map, awful region," while another said, "Needed more time in the oven." In 18th place, we have the originals, Pokemon Red and Blue, or Green if you're from Japan. So this first generation of Pokemon games laid the groundwork for not only a long-running game series, but also a social phenomenon of trading creatures on the school playground. But returning to those first 2 games almost 30 years later highlights some of their flaws. Outdated but charming, says one person. Held together with tape and staples, said another. And finally, this should stay in the 90s. 17th on the list is Pokemon Yellow, the follow-up to those original Pokemon games. Just a better Red and Blue, says one person. A fun anime follow-up, says another. You see, Yellow is like a strange fusion between Pokemon Red and Blue and the Pokemon TV anime. Pikachu accompanies the player on their journey, just like Ash and his Pikachu, with the game even replicating Pikachu's distinctive anime voice. In 16th place is Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, the first Pokemon games released on the DS. With Diamond and Pearl being some of the best-selling titles in the series, you'd expect them to be viewed with a strong dose of nostalgia. But these titles' slow pace and limited regional Pokédex were widely noted by survey takers. Too slow, too much backtracking. Good, but slow and flawed. Way too slow. 15th on the list is Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the most recent additions to the series. It's almost impossible to discuss these 2 games without fixating on their atrocious technical performance. Buggy, inconsistent frame rate, ugly textures and geometry. But underneath all of that is some really fun and innovative gameplay. Great story, but very glitchy. Great gameplay ruined by performance. I really hope the next set of Pokemon games is able to learn some lessons from Scarlet and Violet. 14th on the list is Pokemon X and Y, the very first 3DS Pokemon games. For the first time, the whole game world, from characters to Pokemon, were modelled in full 3D. Nostalgic for me, beautiful too. Graphics aged poorly. Very easy and very generic. While what's in X and Y is certainly enjoyable enough, it feels a bit like the time that would normally be spent refining the story and characters was instead swallowed up by the technical leap from 2D to 3D. In 13th place is Pokemon Sun and Moon, some of the most unique Pokemon games in recent years. With Sun and Moon, Game Freak shook up the traditional Pokemon formula, replacing gyms with trials and putting a real focus on story. Lovely region and different challenges. Good but cutscene heavy. Too many cutscenes. This game seems to really divide fans. In 12th is Pokemon Gold and Silver. As the first full follow-ups to Gen 1, Gold and Silver had a lot to live up to. And they did, introducing day-night cycles, breeding, plus a whole new batch of Pokemon for the first time. Expanded the adventure, 2 regions in one, the birth of the shiny. Obviously, all of the Game Boy Pokemon games feel pretty outdated if you play them now, but Gold and Silver represent a big step forward for the Pokemon series. In 11th place, we have Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, the slightly strange sequel games to Sun and Moon. But while Black 2 and White 2 are whole new games with brand new adventures, the Ultra games feel more like New Game Plus for Sun and Moon. Should have been DLC, says one person. They made the story worse, says another. And finally, Side Grade from Sun and Moon. In 10th place is Pokemon Crystal. Crystal added a lot of polish to the already pretty great Gold and Silver. It's not as much of a jump as you'll see with some other third games, but sometimes incremental improvement is all you're really looking for. A female protagonist at last, says one person. The definitive Gen 2 game, says another. And finally, didn't seem to change much. 9th on the list is Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. These are the first ever Pokemon remakes, introducing the concept of taking old Pokemon games and giving them a fresh coat of paint. Like Crystal, these GBA remakes stick closely to the original experience, adding polish, bonus content, and new mechanics to the Gen 1 Pokemon games. Best way to play Kanto, best version of Kanto, best Kanto experience. In 8th place is Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, the first Pokemon games on the Game Boy Advance. Not only did that come with a huge graphical upgrade, but the game's setting, Hoenn, proved popular with fans. Good region, great starters, says one person. Relaxing region, awesome Pokemon, says another. Next up, in 7th place, is Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, the 3DS remakes of Ruby and Sapphire, which we've just talked about. Very replayable, lots to discover, says one person. Great remake, great post-game, says another. And finally, lots and lots and lots of people said, too much water. 6th on the list is Pokemon Black and White. Game Freak had high ambitions for Gen 5, featuring a more mature-feeling story and essentially rebooting the Pokédex. At the time of Gen 5's release, this Pokédex reboot made the games somewhat controversial, but looking back, these ambitious games achieved a lot. Stunning story and refreshing decks. Amazing story, world, new Pokemon, but also didn't connect with the Pokemon. The 5th best Pokemon game is Pokemon Platinum, the 3rd game companion to Diamond and Pearl. Platinum dramatically sped up the slow pace of Diamond and Pearl, expanded the Pokédex, and added extra content too. The definitive Sinnoh experience, says one person. A worthy expansion, 5 stars, says another. And finally, improves upon great games. 4th on the list is Pokemon Black 2 and White 2. These games stand alone in the Pokemon series as direct sequels to previous Pokemon games, taking place just 2 years after Black and White. The already great story of those games evolves further in these sequel games, and it helps the region of Unova to feel uniquely real, like time actually passes here. Gorgeous sprites and scenery. Love letter sequel. The biggest Pokemon game yet. In 3rd place, we have Pokemon Legends Arceus. Arceus marked a bold departure from the Pokemon formula, to the point that it wasn't initially clear if this was a mainline Pokemon game or not. It is, by the way. Arceus' open-ish world and on-location catching system are changes that have so far carried forward, and breathed new life into a series that was beginning to feel a little stale. Refreshing new take on Pokemon, amazing formula shake-up, pretty visuals, and finally, best Pokemon game in years. 2nd on the list, the runner-up is Pokemon Emerald. In a lot of ways, this game is the definitive Hoenn experience, bringing over the elements that made Ruby and Sapphire great, alongside exciting new features like the Battle Frontier. Definitive Gen 3 experience, says one person. 3rd version done right, says someone else. Pokemon perfected, says one more. But it wasn't quite perfected here, because we still have one more entry on the list. And in 1st place, the most popular mainline Pokemon games are Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver. How to do a remake right, says one person. The most content-filled Pokemon game, says someone else. Now, while Heart Gold and Soul Silver aren't quite perfect, their wonky level curve is infamous. As far as Pokemon games go, these 2 DS remakes are about as flawless as you get. Polished to perfection, says one person. Following Pokemon mechanic equals best mechanic, says another. By taking Gold and Silver and improving on them, fleshing them out in every way, from graphics to music to game mechanics, I mean Pokemon following. It is truly no surprise that these excellent Pokemon remakes scored the top spot of the list. This video is part 2 of a Pokemon ranking series on my channel. Last week I put out a video where fans ranked every single Pokemon, so make sure to check that video out if you've not seen it yet. And as always, thanks very much to my patrons for their support, in particular Alison Withernall, Brett and Eric, Candy Crystal, Cyprian Eov, Daryl Gero, Ellie Birnbaum, Eliza the Cutie, Eliza the Doe, Evan Kinney, Hi There and Bye, J.E., Jim Gilsonan, Kieran Chan, Kelly Wright, Lucas Little, Michael Gunter, Skater Pie, and Thomas Söderlund.